Good morning, everyone. This is Troy Grant at the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. You are attending the Gear Up Tennessee Informational and Technical Assistance webinar. We're going to give everyone another minute or two, and then we will begin. So I'm going to put everyone on, keep everyone on mute, and then we will get started. Thanks so much. Okay, good morning. I think we are ready to go ahead and get started. My name is Troy Grant. I'm the Associate Executive Director of College Access and Success at the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. Thank you so much for joining us for this. We're really excited about the Gear Up opportunity, and we're excited to share information with you. And really our objective here is to provide you with all of the information that you need in order to make an informed decision about kind of your interest in submitting a proposal to be one of the Gear Up Tennessee collaboratives, but also we want to make sure that it's very clear what Gear Up is, what the application and proposal process looks like, and how it will work, how we will make selections. Our objective really is to just to be as transparent and to provide as much information as possible. So thank you for joining us. I know that this has been a very odd week in Tennessee weather, and many of you from schools have been closed most of the week, and so thank you so much for taking the opportunity to join us. So we'll go ahead and get started. A brief agenda for our time. I'm going to provide you just a brief overview of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, who we are, what we do, an overview of the current college access landscape, and then we're going to really dive into what Gear Up Tennessee is, a review of the site selection process, and a review of the components of the Gear Up Tennessee proposal, and we'll kind of step through that. A couple of housekeeping items that just might be helpful. We, you know, when you're looking at your screen through the WebEx platform, you should have a couple of different options on ways to communicate with us. One of those is via chat. The other is via Q&A. What we would ask is that as we go through the materials that you click on that Q&A button and submit a question. We will be monitoring those as we go through the webinar. We have 92 participants on the call, and so I think unmuting everybody will become a little unwieldy. So what we will do is we will monitor those questions, and as we go through, we'll try to answer them where appropriate. But at the very end of the webinar, we will also spend some real quality time going through those questions and answers. I will also say that we've set up a website, thec.proposals@tn.gov, if you have questions. you can submit those there, and we will be collecting those. And then after this webinar and through the regional meetings that we'll be having next week, as we get questions and as we provide answers, we are going to be providing an FAQ that will be located on the THEC website, the same place where the proposal information is, so that everyone has access to the information and the questions and answers that are being asked. So we'll kind of look at some trends of kind of, points of clarification, and we'll make sure that that is disseminated in such a way that everyone can benefit. So that is the agenda for the day. Let's kind of start then and looking at THEC and THEC. THEC and THEC are two separate college, state organizations that are led by the same executive director, and we have a pretty significant overlap in staff. So while officially two separate organizations, we really do function as one. Our mission statement is that we are relentlessly focused on increasing the number of Tennesseans with post-secondary credential. And that really does span a lot of the things that are happening in higher education, as you can see from this list of things that THEC and THEC are doing every day. But we also really are very intent on making sure that we are helping students transition, that we were building a college-going culture across the state where students are not just making the transition from secondary to post-secondary, but they're also making a transition that is well-suited to their futures, to what their goals and objectives are, but they're making a transition that will ultimately lead in some kind of a credential for that student. That's at the heart of everything that THEC and THEC does. The division that I have the pleasure of working in and overseeing is the College Access and Success Division. Our purpose is really, that we believe that every Tennessean should have the opportunity to pursue higher education, and we focus in on creating the resources and programs that turn that college aspiration into a reality. So some of the things that we do in this office are the Tennessee Electronic Transcript Exchange, collegeforTN.org, the Path to College events, it's College Application Week, FAFSA Frenzy, College Signing Day, the College Planning Nights. Advice Tennessee is a program that is managed in this office, and then also Gear Up Tennessee. We also have a relatively new initiative over the last couple of years that reaches into higher ed that's focused on retention of Tennessee Promise students. So we really are the programmatic arm of the agency that bridges this gap from K-12 to post-secondary. So the Drive to 55 is something that if you have been involved in education in Tennessee in the last several years, that you're very familiar with. We are currently at 39.3% degree attainment for our adult population. The goal is 55% by 2025. And this is an imperative. This is an imperative for our state to be economically viable. And I think you've all heard the talking points and kind of the message about, and the reason why the 55 is that in 2025 we know that at least 55% of the jobs in Tennessee will require some kind of credential. So it's very important for our state to be economically viable, that this be kind of our northern star. And this really does guide a lot of the work that we do. But I think for those of you who work with students and who work in where that 55%, where they have names and they have faces, you really think about those student stories. And this is also some data from the Department of Ed that you probably have seen, but I think it really speaks to kind of the imperative and the sense of urgency we have around creating a college-going culture and a college success culture in the state of Tennessee. We know that of the 2007 cohort of high school freshmen, so these would be the students who graduated in 2011, when following their trajectory and where they went and what they did, we know that 22,334 of those students entered the workforce. Of those students, they had an average annual income of less than $10,000. They had a 16% chance of earning above minimum wage. If I live in Nashville, and you cannot live in Nashville on that kind of money, and I would dare say that in the majority of our state that would also be true. So when we think about this work and the work that we do here in our division at THEC, and then specifically, the work we do around college access and success, it really is about how can we move the needles for students so we really can change the trajectory of these students' lives. We've all had have those stories of students who were those first-generation students. When a student goes to college, the family tree is changed, and that's really what we're all about. There's some national data that speaks to college aspirations. That 70% of Americans say it's very important for an adult in this country to have a degree. 22% of Americans agree or strongly agree that they are confident that having only a high school diploma can lead to a good job. And 96% of ACT low-income high school graduates aspire to earn a post-secondary degree credential. So we don't have an aspiration problem. We know that the vast majority of folks value education and know intrinsically that is important. However, academic readiness is a challenge, and I think it's something that the Department of Ed and, of course, those folks who are in school buildings and school districts across the state are looking to address on a daily basis. But one of the things that we see is that academic readiness, while a challenge for all of our students, is a particular challenge for our low-income students. In Tennessee, only 17% of students met all 4 ACT benchmarks. And this was as of a report from SCORE in 2016, and only 1 in 5 Hispanic students scored at college-ready levels in 3 or more subject areas, and fewer than 1 in 10 African-American students do also. So not only is there this disparity that we see amongst our income bands, but our students of color, students who are traditionally underrepresented in higher education, are not academically prepared. And I think there's the nomenclature from the Department of Ed is that all means all. We very much adopt this idea that all students means all students, and what can we do to address these gaps. College going in Tennessee, you know, Tennessee has been in the headlines nationally. The conferences we go to, I think people are a little bit dumbfounded by things like the Tennessee Promise and where we are in FAFSA filing. So this is a good story that we've had this really sharp increase over the last several years in college going, and that's exciting. We're headed in the right direction, and we need to continue this momentum. So this is a positive trajectory that we're on. And you know, we see this also with our FAFSA filing rates, where we've had tremendous increases over the last several years, and we lead the country in this metric. However, we do know that the majority of our school districts within the state of Tennessee do fall below the national college going rate. And so we're headed in the right direction, but there's still more work to be done. This is a study that was done by the Harvard Center for Education Policy and Research, and in partnership with the Tennessee Department of Ed. And again, this is kind of reiterates, we know that low-income students are half as likely to move on to college than their wealthier peers. And this was also interesting. When we applied for the Gear Up grant, we took a picture of all of the eligible Gear Up schools. So these are schools that, based on a previous year's data, met the free and reduced lunch price requirement and the college-going requirement. And seniors from those schools, only 35% of those Tennessee Promise applicants from those schools met all of the requirements to take advantage of the Tennessee Promise. And this was 9 percentage points less than their peers at non-eligible schools. And so I think that this is the opportunity, and this is why we're glad that you're here, and we're glad that we have the opportunity to explore a partnership. Again, just kind of reiterating the point, we know that low-income students are less likely to know about financial aid than their peers. Without some basic college knowledge, parents overestimate costs by 228%. And we see this too even in the Tennessee Promise world, where what we see in some of our high school opinion survey research and other research that we've done is that there's still a perception and sometimes a real barrier around financial aid and kind of the perceptions of cost that do inhibit students' ability and kind of thinking patterns around going to college. So I think that the kind of the sense there is that we've had great growth in the state of Tennessee. This is both an economic and a personal imperative, but there's also a lot of opportunity here. And so we think that one of the avenues to address some of the challenges and best take advantage of the opportunities that are before us is the Gear Up project. So I'm going to provide a bit of an overview of Gear Up. Gear Up is a federal program that is administered by the the U.S. Department of Education. It began in 1998 with initial funding levels of $120 million. That has increased to be over $300 million a year Gear Up is actually is an acronym. It stands for Gaining Early Awareness and Readiness for Undergraduate Programs. We applied, Tennessee applied via THEC for a grant as part of the 2017 application cycle. We received word very late in September that we were awarded. Our award will run through 2024. Part of the way that we have structured our grant program is that we will operationalize this grant, and we'll talk more about this in a bit, through a competitive application process, and we will select Gear Up Tennessee collaboratives. There are 3 national Gear Up goals, the first being increasing the academic performance and preparation for post-secondary education for Gear Up students, increasing the rates of high school graduation and enrollment in post-secondary education for your Gear Up students, and increasing Gear Up students and their families' knowledge of post-secondary education options, preparation, and financing. A little bit of background in terms of Gear Up Tennessee, which is Tennessee's iteration of this. Tennessee received its first grant in 2005. We had a 10.7 percentage point increase in the college going rate at the 9 rural school districts where we worked through that grant. Our current grant that we received in 2012, it's running through 2019, is still ongoing. In that project, in the first 2 to 3 years of data. So this is, we don't have the most recent data yet, nor is this project completed. We have had a 9 percentage point increase in college going rates, and I will just note that that's during the time span that we've had the Tennessee Promise. So there's been a significant change here. The rate of increase at the current Gear Up schools has doubled that of the state. So these were schools that were below the state average, that were all had more economically disadvantaged students based on the free and reduced lunch data. And so we're seeing increases that are doubling the state, and that's exciting. And so obviously, again, the 2017 grant was just announced, and that's what we're talking about today. So what is Gear Up Tennessee? Gear Up Tennessee is a state-led, federally funded initiative, and really what we're looking to do is to dramatically increase the number of Tennesseans who are accessing and succeeding in higher education. As I mentioned, we're operationalizing the grant through Gear Up Tennessee collaboratives that are awarded through the competitive RFP process that we've published. We are going to be awarding over $9 million in funds. We will be, the Gear Up Tennessee collaboratives will be selected and awarded, and the grants will start June 1 and will run through September 1 of 2024. In total, the partnership will last 6 years and 3 months. And the goal really is to systemically expand a culture of college access and success that drives increased student outcomes throughout the life of the grant and beyond. Our purpose here is not to create and do good work for just a small group of students, although that's part of it. It is to partner with communities, give them resources and tools and researches and all the infrastructure they need in order to expand a college-going culture that can be sustained once the grant ends. And this is really the unique opportunity. This is a much longer federal grant than most, and so we have some opportunity to really create some long-term change, both for our state, and then the folks who are awarded can really do that work locally. And so I think that's the exciting opportunity. So what makes Gear Up unique? It's a holistic program that is rooted in early intervention. We do start in middle school and follow a cohort of kids all the way through their first year of college, in addition to providing services to seniors. We'll talk more about that. We do follow an entire grade, so we're not cherry picking groups of students. We're really serving everyone within a school in a grade band and then following them all the way through. There's also kind of a research component. We do a lot of data collection in this grant that we provide technical assistance with and resources around, but this gives us the ability to evaluate the project, but then also to give some good feedback to school districts about how they're doing and how their efforts can be improved. And there's a real community aspect here, and this is part of our model around the collaborative that we'll talk more about, but you'll see in the national Gear Up community that this kind of idea of higher ed and K-12 and community partners partnering together and wrapping these resources around these kids is really at the heart of Gear Up. And again, we leverage local assets and resources for sustainability, and that's the match component, which we will also talk about. The award amount, again, we are awarding over $9 million. At minimum, the annual awards across the state will be 1.5. We anticipate that the total awards will be between $80,000 to $200,000 a year, and that will be for each year of the grant. We will be calibrating and kind of calculating these awards using a formula where each collaborative will get kind of a baseline of funds of $65,000, and then based on the number of students that are going to be served, we are going to be working through a formula to then provide the rest of the award. What we're anticipating is that the per student amount, and this would be for the cohort group, how we would calculate this, would be $250 per student of additional funding on average. Schools that are very large will probably get less per student. Schools that are very small will get more per student, and that's really to absorb any fixed costs that are associated with implementing the project. And some of this will depend too on the total number of applications and awards that we make. And to kind of give context to that, what the grant was delivered around and awarded around was that we would serve a cohort of 3,250 students and a high school senior group of 2,750 students, and so we have to at least meet those benchmarks. So I couldn't tell you as of today the number of schools that we will award. That will depend on the size of the schools and the makeup, and kind of when we look at all of the schools as a cohort. And when we have that information, we will then be able to fine-tune the total amount and specific amount per kid. The grant matched. So here at Tennessee, we do require that there is a 20% annual match in grant year one. That match percentage increases by 20% each grant year. So in grant year two, it's 40%. You will provide these match to your annual award, which will remain the same each year if all conditions are met or if there aren't huge shifts in the number of students you serve. And matching dollars may be contributed through actual dollars or eligible in-kind contributions that meet the kind of the project's goals and objectives. One thing I want to make really clear, because I do think the match, particularly when we're talking about the collaborative structure where we're zoning in on high schools, can be daunting. THEC will provide collaboratives with a lot of technical assistance in meeting the grant match requirement. In the, I guess now, almost 13 years that we've been implementing Gear Up Tennessee projects, we've never had a collaborative or school not meet the match requirement. And so there's a lot of ways to address this, and we have two regional coordinators, Dwayne Gregg and Shayla Guy, who are excellent at providing the technical assistance to make sure people have plans to meet this requirement. So I think this is something that I don't want this to turn anybody away, and we are happy to answer any questions that you have about how that has worked or how other districts have potentially met the match requirement. So here's an example. So if your award was $100,000, grant year one, you would match 20%. It would increase then to 40, 60, 80,000, and then the last 2 years, you would match 100% of the grant award. So the award amount that we're awarding does not go down as the match goes up. That remains constant. Okay, so Gear Up Tennessee Collaboratives. At its core, Gear Up Tennessee is a partnership between THEC and the Gear Up TN Collaborative. To be eligible, high schools must meet two requirements. They need to have a college going rate at or below the state average based on the most recent 3 years of data supplied by the Commission. And they have to have at least 50% of their students eligible for free or reduced price lunch. Eligible schools will then partner with their feeder middle schools that also have 50% free or reduced lunch population, the local Board of Education, at least one post-secondary institution, and at least two community-based organizations or local businesses. These individuals will come together and form what we call a collaborative, that group will then help guide the implementation of the project. Let's see. In terms of student populations, we have two populations that are served with this project. We have a group of cohort students. We call them the cohort. They're the class of 2023. Interestingly, they are also the class that will graduate from community colleges in 2025 at the end of the Drive 55. So in a lot of ways, this is the Drive 55 cohort, this class of 2023. We will follow them starting in the 8th grade, and you'll see in terms of that kind of chart there, we will follow them 8th, 9th, all the way through their freshman year of college. Then we also have the group that we call priority students. These are the students that are seniors in the direct service high schools, and we will serve those students each year. So we have a cohort we follow longitudinally, and then we provide more kind of transitional services, FAFSA completion, application to college, those types of things to high school seniors each grant year. We have implemented, and this is new for this project, we'll be deploying a framework for our new project that is made up of what we call the 6 R's, rigor, that all students need to be actively prepared and take rigorous coursework, reaching higher, creating a school and community environment that is characterized by expectations, policies, and initiatives that support all students' pursuit of post-secondary education, relevance. We want to make sure that students connect their career aspirations and skills to students' education goals, relationship, fostering connections that strengthen students' post-secondary success, raise awareness, promote early awareness of the steps necessary to prepare for, apply for, pay for, and succeed in post-secondary education, and then reinforce action, assist students in completing critical steps of the college-going process. This framework, we want to give this to you as like a context, but this is the framework that will guide our evaluation when we work with school districts and schools to build their annual work plan. It will be built around this framework. In the RFP, we also provided in attachment A, a really robust overview of the framework that has some strategies that we've pulled out, and it provides the kind of rationale and the research that supports it. This was a portion of our application to the U.S. Department of Education, but this really does show, I think, if you were to read through that document, kind of the heart of what GEAR Up is and kinds of things that school districts will be doing with GEAR Up funds. Each of the collaboratives will hire a GEAR Up Tennessee site coordinator. The site coordinator is essential to GEAR Up Tennessee success. We've seen this through our evaluation, both through our third-party evaluator, but then also just what we understand anecdotally from the folks in the field. Each GEAR Up TN collaborative, again, will hire the site coordinator. They will be responsible for implementing and coordinating the GEAR Up TN project within the direct service schools. Oftentimes, they are providers of the services, but a lot of times, too, they are the coordinator. I think that's important. This is, we don't want GEAR Up Tennessee to be this kind of niche thing within a school. It is an excellent way for school leaders to leverage a lot of wonderful things that you are doing and stitch them together and provide some additional resources to bolster those things and move beyond where you are now. And so this person can coordinate some of those things. The person will be required to be 11-month employee. We have not had this requirement in the past, but the reason why we're adding this is that summer melt, that kind of the students melting off, graduating high school, saying they're going to college but not actually enrolling, is a phenomenon that we must address. And having an 11-month employee provides us and you as an applicant, and eventually, hopefully, a receiver of a grant, the staff that you need in order to do that work. While the site coordinator will be a school district employee, THEC will have final approval of the site coordinator selection and their continued employment. But we will be available and are happy to help in selecting that individual, but that will ultimately be the school district's decision, but we will have to sign off on it. Let's see. So, GEAR Up Tennessee commitments. The site will participate in required program evaluation activities and programmatic agreements, such as the data sharing agreement between the school district, the high school, and the Department of Ed and THEC. So there's a lot of data that flows through this project, and so there will be a data sharing agreement. This will also allow us to give you data back, so we'll be able to pull more robust college-going data than FAFSA completion data and other data that will help inform the practice on the local level. School districts will have to collect and report student and school level demographic and academic data in a timely and accurate manner. A part of that, too, service data will be collected, and THEC will provide a data system to assist schools in doing that. And we'll also provide technical assistance on how to use that system and to make sure that we're all following the same protocols around service definitions. And so we provide really robust professional development and training around that. We are also asking that GERUP sites to develop a college access steering committee that is made up at minimum of representatives from each of the GERUP team collaborative member organizations. And that will also include at least one student and one parent. The steering committee will meet 3 times per year, and they will provide assistance to the collaborative and to the schools in developing their annual work plan, providing community support to grant initiatives, and really think through how can we sustain and expand these initiatives, again, with an eye towards the end of the six-year grant. I will say that this is something that we started implementing in the current GERUP grant, and we have several of our districts who have really run with this. So started with groups of 5 to 8, and now have 20 individuals and organizations that contribute to talking about in X high school, how do we build this college-going community and sustain it? And that has been also an excellent source of match. And so we will provide technical assistance in helping districts do this, but we think this is a really important aspect of implementing the project. We also ask that sites implement activities as outlined in Attachment B in the GERUP Team site selection RFP and as directed by THEC in accordance with the GERUP implementation guidance. And along with that, I will say too, we work really hard to provide every year an implementation guide for our projects that outlines all of the federal policies related to what's allowable and not allowable in terms of using GERUP funds, what our procedures are in terms of reimbursements, and how the grant works. And so this is just an area where we work hard to provide good technical assistance. And this is important. GERUP Tennessee services must supplement, not supplant, existing services. So whatever it is that you envision doing with GERUP funds in partnership with THEC, it must build beyond with what you're doing now. We can't supplant what's already existing. So this is the chart that was mentioned on the previous slide. I will not read through this, but this gives you an idea of our thinking of the different services, the years that they will occur and the related GERUP focus area from that GERUP framework. This will serve, and every year sites will get a minimum required services chart that will kind of look very similar to this. These are required services at minimum. This is not an exhaustive list, though, of what GERUP can do within a given school district. We are firm believers that the people who know their populations the best, who know what their needs are and what the opportunities that will best move student outcomes are people in school buildings and in classrooms, and they're you. And so while these are the required services, this is the framework that at minimum must happen. There are things that you know are needs that are above and beyond or are not maybe addressed by these, or there's some latitude. So for instance, where we might have academic tutoring and workshops. There are a lot of different ways that you can do that, and that will look different in one school versus another. And we want to provide the latitude for school districts to kind of think through that and implement and test services that best meet their needs. So this is our required services chart, but know that this, again, is not exhaustive, and there are a lot of ways that a district can localize this information. I will kind of ping on just a couple of things. You see, obviously, college visits, college application week, college planning night, college signing day, FAFSA Frenzy. These are our Path to College events. All GERUP schools will participate in these. We'll be partnering with Tennessee Achieves and others to do things around remediation reduction, so making sure that students, once they get to post-secondary, don't have to go into remedial or developmental education. But two that I want to kind of just zero in on, ACT curriculum alignment. We will be working with the Department of Education, Tennessee Department of Ed, to work on workshops, and those will happen twice in the grant, to make sure that and to help schools align their curriculum and their instruction to best serve students with the ACT, but then also SAILS. So SAILS is a state initiative that I'm sure many of you are aware of. SAILS is something that is funded through the THEC, and we strongly believe in SAILS Math, and there's also expansion of SAILS English that is forthcoming and is currently being tested. We want to ensure that every school that is funded has both the available licenses that they need in order to meet their needs in their school, and also has the infrastructure related to computers and those kinds of things. So this is something that I just want to highlight, that many schools across the state are already using SAILS, and it could be that your need is already met, but if there is room for expansion, we want to make sure that you have everything you need in order to do that. Okay, and then, so work plan development. Each year, Garrett and Collaboratives will develop a plan to meet the minimum services required, and then any extra services that they want to or see a need to implement. We believe that collaborative planning equals better student outcomes, and that's collaborative with our staff here at THEC, but then also collaborative within your community. It is our vision that schools build community commitment to reaching these goals. And we want schools to set goals around, some of our benchmarks that are part of our evaluation about the percentage of students who are completing Algebra 1, the percentage of students who are aspiring to go to college, who are filling out the FAFSA. And when we bring transparency to those goals and community kind of excitement and involvement in those goals, that's when sustainability and systemic change happens. And so this is, we view our partnership with our schools to be a partnership. And so we are, that's kind of how we position this work. While we are the grantor and the collaboratives are the grantee, there's a relationship there, and that's one of partnership. So, Garrett Tennessee's success, while the strategies and all of these things around kind of, the research that backs it up is very important, at the end of the day, Garrett Tennessee is about people, it's about leadership, it's about relationships, and it's about what we can do to best serve students. So with that, we are going to transition into a description of the Garrett Tennessee proposal and the selection process. Here is the timeline. We released the RFP on January 8th. We are holding the overview webinar today. Next week, we will have 3 regional meetings, very similar content to this, to provide additional information. We are asking that schools submit a notice of interest by January 31st. The proposals are due February 23rd. Notifications will be delivered to applicants who are selected for the next round, and we're going to talk more about this in a minute, of consideration on March 16th, and then we will hold team interviews here in Nashville through the beginning of April. After that, we will make our selections, and those will be announced April 18th. Then we we'll give the sites that are selected their grant contract along with data sharing agreements, and we ask that that be returned by May 18th. We are then going to ask that collaboratives hire their site coordinator by June 8th. And then we will have a mandatory meeting of collaborative representatives in Nashville in mid-June, along with a week-long training for the site coordinator that will happen here in Nashville. We are working out the details of the specific date of that right now, and as soon as that's set, we will let the group know. Then finally, INSEP, the National Council for Community Education Partnerships, is the National Technical Assistance Organization for GEAR, and they have a conference in July, and so it will be in Washington, D.C., and we will ask that project directors and site coordinators attend that as well. And then we will actually be able to start offering services in fall 2018. So, eligibility. So we're going to dive into some of the nitty-gritty here. So to be eligible, high schools must meet 2 requirements. We've already talked about this a bit. They have a college going rate below the state average based on the most recent 3 years. Have at least 50% of students eligible for free and reduced lunch. And they will partner with their feeder middle schools that have also 50% free and reduced lunch, local board of education, at least 1 post-secondary institution, and at least 2 community-based organizations or businesses. Important note, applicants will provide the free and reduced lunch percentage for each of their schools as part of their proposal. When we released the RFP, we had not received yet the data from the Tennessee Department of Education regarding free and reduced lunch. So when we get that data from you in your proposal, we will confirm that data that you meet the requirement with the Tennessee Department of Education. If there is some disparity, we will have a conversation with you about that just to make sure, that we're meeting, because this is a federal requirement. Schools may also meet this requirement using the community eligibility provision or the more traditional means of, how folks have determined eligibility for free and reduced lunch. So multiple high schools, and high schools really do serve as the lead applicant in this project, may partner in forming a Garrett Teen Collaborative as long as the total 12th grade class size at the time of application is less than 400. Schools must be in the same school district. This limit is only applicable to collaboratives comprised of multiple high school partners. So that is to say that if a very large high school that has 400, 500 high school seniors, they are still eligible to apply. They just can't partner with another school in submitting their application. So the reason why this is important is that we feel like local, having involvement of the school district is very important, but having building level involvement in the proposal and the implementation of this project is also very important. So to kind of give a picture of that, 2 scenarios, we have 2 schools that have 150 seniors, 2 schools, one that has 200, one has 250. The 2 schools with 150 seniors each could join together and submit an application. However, the 2 schools with 200 and 250 would need to submit their applications separate. So that being said, the 2 schools that are in the same school district but then also have 150 seniors each, they don't have to submit a proposal together. They also can submit that proposal individually if they so choose. To be eligible, schools must not be actively participating in a Garrett Partnership Grant. So what we run is a state Garrett grant. Partnership grants are grants usually to school districts or to higher ed institutions directly from the Department of Ed, and that's as of fall 2018. Partnership grants, and the reason this being is that we don't want to have a duplication of services or 2 projects working in the same school. High schools that are currently participating in THEC Advice Tennessee program are eligible to submit a proposal. If selected, however, the district will need to choose between being an Advice Tennessee school or a Garrett Tennessee school. The programs are duplicative in terms of the services that are offered during that senior year in some ways. Advice Tennessee dives really deep and has more time and space for very intentional individual advising services to juniors and seniors, where Garrett kind of has a broader kind of starting with 8th grade, that group following up, and then also providing some services to high school seniors. So they just have a slightly different focus, but we don't necessarily want both programs operating in the same school. We've provided a list of schools meeting the Garrett-TN college going rate eligibility requirement. If you do not see your school on this list or you have some questions about the data, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and I'll provide some contact information at the end of the presentation. So, funding priorities. We are going to prioritize the selection of Garrett-TN sites where funding has the greatest opportunity to positively impact students and outcomes, and when there is clear evidence that all collaborative partners are really uniform in their understanding of what they want to accomplish and they're focused on success of the project. Sites will be selected based on the following criteria: documented need, commitment to implementing Garrett-TN initiatives, strength of partnerships, and the plan to serve populations that are traditionally underrepresented in post-secondary education. We are going to be offering, as part of the scoring rubric that is also located in the RFP, at the end of the RFP, 2 sets of priority points. Communities that have never participated in a state Gear Up grant, so that's since 2005, will receive 3 priority points added to their proposal score. Collaboratives that serve schools located in distressed counties as determined by the Appalachian Regional Commission will receive 2 priority points. So the scale is 100 points, 3 points added if you've never been part of Gear Up before, 2 points added if you're located in a distressed county. Distressed counties rank amongst the 10% most economically distressed counties, again, as defined by ARC. I have a list of them here. This list is also found in the RFP. The selection process really has 2 major components, the proposal review and then collaborative interviews leading to final selection. We anticipate selecting as many Gear Up team collaboratives as necessary to serve a cohort of 3,250 students from the class of 2023 across the state. The proposal review, we'll start with that of those 2 sections. Is a review. We'll have a review panel that will read each of the proposals, and we'll have review teams. They will be made up of K-12 professionals, college access folks, higher education folks. They'll evaluate the proposals and score them. We will then add priority points as appropriate. The scoring rubric that those readers will use is available in Attachment D, so I would encourage you to review that because that is going to be kind of the yardstick that readers will use in reviewing these proposals. We will rank the proposals according to the average score assigned by the review panel and select it for further consideration based upon the following criteria. We are going to look at the average score assigned to each proposal, including the priority points, the extent to which the project will be successful at the applying schools, and the extent to which the proposal represents the educational needs and geographic diversity of the state. The proposal review process will result in a list of applicants who will be invited to participate in team interviews. So the proposal will be reviewed. From those reviews, we will then invite teams to come for interviews. So this is something that is new to Gear Up, but it's something that we did as part of our Advise Tennessee implementation. We are asking that teams of folks come and to make sure that we're all on the same page and that there is joint commitment to this project going forward. THEC will contact the project liaison that's listed on your cover sheet of your proposal after we review the scores. Only the schools that are recommended as finalists by the proposal review team will have an in-person meeting. The purpose of the interview is to discuss the goals and objectives of the initiative, assess mutual commitment to the project, and provide for time for collaboratives to answer questions identified through the proposal review process. So if there are questions that arise from readers, we will then follow up on those through this venue. Collaborative teams will include at minimum participating high school or high schools principals, middle school principals, at least one counselor who has responsibility for working with high school seniors, other representatives from collaborative partners as deemed appropriate by the applicant. And the ideal team would include other key administrators and staff that you really view to be key to building the college-going culture within your schools and then also implementing the project. I will note, particularly around the counselor piece, we're big fans of counselors in this office. This project is not designed to, in any way, replace the wonderful work done by school counselors across the state, but is designed to expand upon it and provide additional resources to that work. So the site coordinator is someone we want to work in coordination and collaboration with the school counselor, which is why we're asking that a school counselor be included. Team interviews will take place here at THEC in Nashville in March and early April, and then we will provide applicants with a scoring rubric of how we will kind of be evaluating those interviews. And then from those interviews, we will make a final determination of who the final Gear Up team collaboratives. are. And again, that announcement will be made April 18th. And so this seems, and I'm sure if it does to you, know it does to us as well, like a very long process. But I think the key here is that, and from our experience, is that you can have the best site coordinator in the world and you can have the best school in the world who's ready to implement. Those two things have to marry in order for this project to really work and really work well. And we are going to be partnering for a very long time. And we want to make sure schools have all the information and have all the consideration that they need in order to understand what the partnership looks like, in the same way that we at THEC want to make sure that this is a good fit going forward. So notice of interest, and we had a question about this. THEC strongly recommends applying collaborators submit a notice to indicate their interest to submit a proposal. This is not required, but I really encourage you to do it because basically after the deadline for this on January 31st, we are going to focus our communication, anything related to the application process, to the individuals from this notice of interest. So basically, by submitting the notice of interest, you're saying it is our plan that we are going to submit an application, and you're going to be designating a point of contact. That way, we're not kind of just like, you know, blasting out emails to the entire state, but then we'll target communication, things like updates to FAQs, those kinds of things, to the appropriate individuals. So I encourage you to do that. We have a link here that will take you to that. Again, we will send out this PowerPoint along with the recording of this session to all participants. We'll put it on our website afterwards. It might be sometime tomorrow. But this link is also available on the THEC website. Let's see. Proposal submission. The grant proposals, again, are due February 23rd. They are due at 4 p.m. Central Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and that's Friday, February 23rd. Submissions should be emailed to thec.proposals@tn.gov. Please do not email me your proposals. It's very nice, and I will read them, but I do encourage you to send them to, when they have to go to thec.proposals@tn.gov. Just make sure that nothing gets lost in anybody's email. This is also the email that if you have questions, send your questions after the webinar to this email address, and we will address those as best we can. Proposals should be no longer than 15 pages, and that excludes the letters of commitment and support and any applicable resumes. Proposals should be sent as a PDF document. Incomplete proposals will not be considered. A notice will be sent to the collaborative contact list listed on the grant proposal confirming that we've received the application within 2 business days. So early that following week, once we process them all, we will send something out to the contact saying, just to let you know that we've received that. That being said, it's the sole responsibility of the applying school to verify that the proposal was in fact received. So we are going to transition now to the actual proposal and just walk through that really briefly. Thank you all so much. I know we are giving you a ton of information, but I hope that this is helpful. But we do want to make sure that we're as thorough as we can be. Let's see if I can get this a little bit, well, this will work. So this is the application template that is available on THEC's website. We ask that you use this to submit your proposal. You will notice that there is a cover sheet that we will ask that you complete that provides the information of each of the lead high schools, along with information for the director of schools and who the primary proposal contact will be. We also ask here who the total 12th grade enrollment anticipated from all participating high schools in the 2018-19 school year, and then again, similarly, the total 8th grade enrollment anticipated from all participating middle schools in the 2018-19 school year in these 2 fields. We then ask, again, because we feel passionately that all school level leaders need to be actively engaged in this process, that there is a signature from each of the principals from the participating middle school and high schools and director of schools on this cover sheet. I will not read each of the questions, but I'll kind of give you in broad overview that Section B really does get to the heart of what is the school's commitment around implementing this project. And we're asking questions to better understand what's the need in your school, what currently is happening. And there are some schools across the state where there's not a lot of work happening in this space, and there are some schools where a lot of work is happening. And neither of the things are necessarily good or bad, but what we want to know is how, if you have a lot of things that are happening or that are existing, how are you going to stitch these things together to do something above and beyond to kind of move the needle dramatically for your students? And then similarly, if this is new work or if there's been little work around this space because of capacity or, staff, whatnot, what are your kind of visions of what is in fact possible? And so these questions really are about getting to the heart of making sure that schools, that we're selecting sites where we can do the most good, but also where there's a high level of commitment and excitement around implementing this project. I will note that question 2 talks about the availability of student time. Question 3, this is something we get a lot of questions about, space. We want there to be designated space for the Garrett, Tennessee site coordinator within the school building. It's important that they are near students. They'll be advising students, interacting with students. And so what is the available space that will be available to the site coordinator? It doesn't necessarily have to be a standalone office, although I think in many cases that's ideal. But, different capacity in different buildings across the state, and we realize that. So we're asking you to describe that. Question 4, I think, is very important. We list through some commitments that I am going to take through just real briefly that these are essential to implementing this project. So we're asking sites, and you'll just click yes or no here, to commit to a designated Garrett, Tennessee project director. So this is different than the site coordinator. This is typically somebody that's a school administrator or a central office employee who will be the point of contact and supervisor for the Garrett TN site coordinator, and then our contact related to items, contract items. But this person, we would invite and want this person to go to some of the professional development, be involved in helping orchestrate the work plan, the annual conferences that NCEP does. And so this person will be that kind of liaison with the site coordinator. And I think that the models where we've seen this work the best is also where this person is someone who's empowered to also take this global view of what's happening at a school or at a school district and say, here are all the wonderful things that are happening, and here's how we can kind of dovetail these things so that we really can best serve our students. And so we really want project directors. This will be not their full-time job in any sense, and it actually will just be kind of like, they'll just be that point of contact, but they're that point of contact both for us and the site coordinator. We're asking that sites commit to hiring the Garrett TN site coordinator who will allocate 100% of their time and effort to implementing the project. Ask sites to commit to develop and implement the Garrett TN work plan that we mentioned earlier. That includes those minimum services, but that work plan will be a guiding document. We'll do that each spring in anticipation of the next year. It's a living document. It can be changed, but that way you, as the grantee has a plan, we can make sure that everything is allowable and that we're moving in the right direction and that there's full transparency there. We're asking that sites commit to implement the minimum services that are outlined in Attachment B of the RFP. We ask that sites commit to implement the project as that partner with our staff in arranging and allowing students to participate in at least one individual advising session each academic year. We call those college planning sessions. So allow time for each year for students to participate in individualized and or small group advising. Allow and assist in the implementation of the Path to College events, which include College App Week, FAFSA Frenzy, College Signing Day, and College Planning Night. We have and will continue to procure a text messaging platform using the research out of from Ben Castleman and Lindsay Page around using text messaging to nudge students to meet key milestones and reduce summer melt, and so allow for implementation of that. We also will have the grant contract, data sharing agreements, and an evaluation that will be done by a third party. And then also we are exploring the possibility of doing some research studies that we'll be partnering with school districts on, where we might have some schools that will implement an intervention and some schools that wouldn't, just to see what's effective. And then when we prove its efficacy, then expand that across the grant, and then hopefully across the state. Commit to deploying the steering committee that we discussed, allowing release time for the site coordinator for monthly site coordinator meetings. We hold those. We cohort our site coordinators so that they have a learning community amongst their peers. Then also provide release time for at least one school counselor to attend, along with the site coordinator, some professional development that we will provide in coordination with our staff, partners, national leaders in kind of this space that we'll bring in. This is, again, part of being a Gear Up school is that we want to make sure you have access to the best resources available, be that things like sales, but then also when we do trainings, we want to invite staff members from your school to also take advantage of that in addition to your site coordinator. And then finally, sending the site coordinator and the project director to at least the one annual capacity building workshop and one annual conference led by the National Council for Community Education Partnerships. You will be able to use grant funds to cover travel costs related to these trainings. We're asking for the commitment of partner middle and high school principals, the project director and site coordinator to participate in an annual day-long workshop in Nashville where we'll talk about Gear Up implementation and what's going on. So this is where, you know, we want to have a high level of buy-in from all aspects of the school. Commit to an annual check-in with Gear Up leadership, be that myself or our regional coordinators, just to discuss how things are going and how we can improve our practice, and we'll provide you the feedback that we're seeing through data and other means. And then finally, commit to meeting the grant match. So in this part of the application, you will just click yes or no. And then Section C, we are asking that you submit information relative to school enrollment. You'll notice here that we have some data that we're asking for 2017-18 academic year data. We're asking you to pull that data as of October 1. So your average daily membership as of October 1. And then for 18-19, we're asking for you to anticipate that information. And for your free and reduced lunch data and your average ACT score for your high schools, we ask that you use just the most recent available data that you have at your disposal. You can add lines to this, so you'll notice we have 4 lines for middle schools, 3 for high schools, where appropriate. I mean, you know, there are many configurations across the state where you might have many feeder middle schools that you can add additional lines as you need it. Letters of support. We're asking that collaborators provide a letter of support from the director of schools, the high school, each high school principal, each middle school principal, and at least one counselor working with high school seniors, and a representative from each of the collaborative partners that you identify as part of your collaborative. Letters of support from collaborative partners should articulate how that organization plans to support implementation of the Gear Up project. Applicants are encouraged to solicit additional letters as necessary of anyone that you feel like would kind of bolster both your proposal, but then also your implementation of the project. So that is a really quick overview of the actual application template. Just a couple of notes. Again, the proposal format, 11-point font, cannot exceed 15 pages. We ask that you submit it as a PDF document. And it should follow the template. So it should be in the order that is outlined in the template. So please use that editable version of the proposal packet, and we have a link to that right there. Regional information technical assistance meetings. So you've seen potentially in the emails that we have been sending out, we are going to be hosting 3 regional meetings next week. We are going to be walking through the same PowerPoint presentation And so the information will be very similar. That said, I would encourage, if you have additional partners you'd like to bring, or if you'd like to, I know that when we submitted our proposal for the U.S. Department of Ed, we both did webinars and went to in-person, and it was just very valuable into us making sure that we understood the process and the application and how best to kind of articulate our plans. And so we invite you to attend those. You can register for those meetings at the link above, and you'll see that the locations are available there. Well, so January 23rd will be in Nashville. The 25th will be in Jackson, and then East Tennessee will be in Knoxville. So with that, we are going to open it up to questions and answers. And so I'm going to kind of read through some of these, and we will do our best to answer any of them that we can. Okay, so I had one question about the 20% match. What is the match? So the match, it can be in kind, it can be cash match, and the matching component will increase 20% each grant year. And again, we will provide technical assistance in doing that. Related to, we provided the link for the notice of interest form. That was another question. You can also go to the THEC website. We have a button that will help you kind of make it really easy for you to do that. The other piece in regards to, so let's see. Okay, so I'm going to read this question. In regards to the maximum student population, the high school we are going to focus on is an enrollment of 389. The incoming 8th grade students from one middle school is 379, and the second middle school is 89, which will put us over 400. Is the maximum 400 only a concern if more than one high school is combining for the application? Yes, that is correct. The maximum is only for if there are multiple high schools. And then in evaluating that 400, so let's say there are multiple high schools, we are only looking at the current high school class of 400. So no need to also look at the 8th grade. So in kind of evaluating, should these schools be combined or be separate, look at that high school class. Let's see, follow-up question to that. And is it based on the 12th grade? So yes, it is based on the 12th grade. Is funding awarded yearly? Will that funding cover the salary of the site coordinator? So yes, the site coordinator salary can be used can be paid for out of grant funds. The funding will be provided annually, and we will distribute the funds on a reimbursement basis. So I will say just one note about the salary for the site coordinator. We have had some of our current sites who have good success, and thinking about sustainability, as I mentioned, the site coordinator and having someone who kind of owns this work is key. Have found and identified local funds to over time begin shifting the salary of the site coordinator from grant funds to local funds, and have used that as part of their match. And that most certainly is allowable and something we would encourage. It's not required, however. But yes, the site coordinator can be paid for out of the grant. But again, that's also not required. So if there are local funds that are available, that also again could just be used as match. Will the site coordinator be employed for the entire duration of the grant? Yes, that is correct. We have a question, is a budget required as part of the 15-page proposal? No, there is no budget for this proposal. Part of the way that Gear Up, the program works, is that we will be providing a outline of kind of services, and then from that a budget will be developed. So no need to require and develop a budget for your proposal. And the due date for the interest form is January 31st. And so let's see if we have any other questions. Let's see, since we have two. So a question of the site coordinator, are they 11-month full-time or part-time? So they are 11-month full-time employee, dedicating 100% of their time and effort to the project. Regarding the site coordinator, since we have 2 high schools and the number of students combined is under the limit allowed, do we have to have a site coordinator for each school or one site coordinator for both? This is an excellent question, and I think that so you have to have at least one site coordinator. I think that one of the conversations, depending on the size of the schools, the amount of money that you will be awarded that we can work through, is whether or not there would be some positive impact to having more than one site coordinator. But we could envision a scenario where one site coordinator serves 2 schools. And so I think that a lot of that will depend on circumstance, and that will be part of how we would try to kind of, once grant awards amounts are made, we will then try to have that conversation with each site. Is there any criteria established or job description for the site coordinator? Yes, we do have that. We're updating it, and we will publish it on the THEC website in kind of our FAQ area in the coming week or so. Does this grant also promote technical schools such as TCAT, or is this just 2-year or 4-year universities? Great question. I'm so glad you asked this question. We use the term college a lot. When we say college, we have this broad definition of college. We mean post-secondary education that leads to a credential, that leads to a living wage for students. And so that is our excellent TCAT sector within the state, 2-year, 4-year. We have this inclusive definition of college going in the state. So when we talk about college going and getting students to their best right path, their individualized path, that most certainly can and should include TCATs for many students. Question about what is the recommended salary for the site coordinator? This varies wide. This will be dependent upon the school district. We will have a limit in terms of that we will establish in terms of salary and benefits, but this will vary depending on the capacity of the grant that you are awarded and kind of what is available. So while we have a limit, we have a wide range across the state. We have many school districts who pay their site coordinators because they're experienced teachers, for instance, and we've had wonderful outcomes from those individuals because they know how schools work, they know the students, they know the administration, and then the school, as part of their match, covers the part that can't be covered as part of the grant, and that is certainly allowable. And so I don't know that I could give you a recommended salary, but we'll leave that up to the school district, but we will have a cap. The current cap, I believe, is $75,000. But that's inclusive of both salary and benefits, which does take benefits piece takes a big chunk. So, but we will work with school districts on kind of framing that out as they're selected. Is sales acceptable as match? Sales is not acceptable as match because it is provided by THEC. So implementation and sales is not in terms of the licenses. So, but to kind of give you a sense of some of our technical assistance. So, if you, as part of your sales implementation, bring in tutors that donate their time to provide, or teachers who stay after school to help students, sales students, the time and effort of those teachers would count as match. So there are a lot of, so while the sales licenses themselves do not count as match, there are other ways that we can look at implementation to address that. Let's see. We will provide a copy of the PowerPoint after the proposal, after the webinar, and once we have the recording. Let's see. Do the partners have to submit the intent as well? So no, there should only be one notice of interest or intent from each collaborative. So the whole organization is applying for the, the school district is, the school is the lead applicant and is submitting the application. That's the only individual entity that should submit a notice of interest. Will THEC set the salary for site coordinator? Also, is there a set salary? So there's not a set salary, and again, school districts will set that salary. So would monies spent for AP training and exams count towards matching funds? So the yardstick for match is that if it would be allowed with Gear Up and if it was happening because of Gear Up in some kind of a way. So if part of your Gear Up implementation, you're working to expand AP and you're doing that, and that's part of what you're articulating, in your development plans, and then you will use local funds to kind of accomplish that, then yeah, most certainly that could be counted as match. Will ESSA students in high school be included in the college going rate? So ESSA students, so the college going rate, so the question basically is, will students who are taking early post-secondary opportunities be part of the college going rate? So no. We think that ESSOs are vitally important. Students who take ESSOs are more successful in higher education, but when THEC runs the college going data, they're looking at students who enroll the fall after they graduate from high school. So a student taking a dual enrollment or a dual credit class does not affect and should not affect your college going rate. Okay, I think, okay, my school is a 6-8 school. Currently the 8th grade class meets the free reduced lunch requirement of 50%. 9th through 12th is roughly is less than the 50%. Will the school be eligible with these numbers? So if the individual, I would say, let me check into that. The way the legislation is drafted is that the school has to meet the free and reduced lunch qualification. And so I think what we would probably want to do is to look at your school holistically. And so if the individual who asked me that question, if you could email us the question at thec.proposals@tn.gov, and I'll give that email in just a sec. And we might need to do a little bit of research to make sure we're in compliance with federal requirements. This is an excellent question. Can the site coordinator be a 12-month employee? Absolutely. And in some ways, I think it would be, I don't know, well, yeah, I think in some ways it would even be our preference. I mean, we're requiring 11-month, but when you have someone who is 12 months doing this work, it really opens up a whole new suite of opportunity about what can happen around summer programming, summer melt, when thinking about the transition from high school to college. And so, yeah, the requirement is at minimum 11 months. A 12-month employee is absolutely fine. Do the site coordinators need to have professional certification or licensing? They do not have to be a certified teacher. I think that in our experience, we have found that folks who are familiar with schools and have some kind of training in that area do very, very well. They do not, though, have to be a licensed teacher or counselor in order to do the work. But again, I think that we've seen much success when those individuals do have those credentials. And I will also say that we will provide in the job description some requirements around minimum education. In terms of free and reduced lunch, since info is taken from direct certification, how will that be measured? Samantha asked me that question. If you could, I might need a little bit more information about kind of some of the underpinnings of your question. If you could email us and we'll connect, and I'll see if I can get you an answer to that, and then we'll also post an answer to that on our website. Will there be guidance regarding the amount of benefits travel for the site coordinator? This would be beneficial to the district when determining salary for the site coordinator. So we are not going to be providing benefits. Oh, you're talking about travel specifically. So yeah, the employee will have whatever the benefits are specifically for your school district, which would probably be the state benefits. In terms of travel, we can provide some guidance in some of our FAQs around how much in the grant we typically have in travel for conferences. Yeah, we can do that. And that'll be in the FAQ. So there's a question about clarifying who sends the letter of interest. First off, I would include the letter of interest in your application. Excuse me. Let me make sure I'm pulling back down. The notice of interest. So the notice of interest is just, it is whoever would be the point of contact for the collaborative. So there doesn't need to be a notice of interest from every organization. It just needs to be a notice of interest from the kind of the lead applicant on the proposal. We would only need one notice of interest per applying collaborative. The what? Yes. So I think that we've kind of slowed down to a trickle in terms of some of the questions. I'm going to let it sit just for one more minute. If you have another question, please feel free to type it in. And again, I'm going to pull this up. We will have available THEC.proposals@tn.gov. You can go to this, send questions to this email address, and we will be happy to answer them and happy to just, give you all the information that you need. And we will, as we get trends of kind of what the questions are, we will be posting that on our website. Will the partners we identify for our collaboratives, let's see, will we need to provide a dollar amount? Oh, so the question is basically for the partners you're identifying, are you going to be required in your proposal to require a match from them and articulate what that match is? No. I think that if you're able to do that, I think it would be compelling, but it is certainly not a requirement, and we're not requiring that the collaborative partners necessarily provide a match. So that is not a requirement, no. Okay, well, if you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to this email address, and we will get those answered just as soon as we can. Thank you so much for your time today. I know we went over our 1 hour that we kind of had projected, but I hope that this was helpful. We covered a lot of information. We're excited about this project. We're excited about the possibility of partnering with many of you. And if there's anything that we can do to clarify or to help you through this process, please do not hesitate to let us know. So thank you all so much, and I hope you have a warm rest of your week. Thanks so much.